Shall we crash on to Malcolm X then?
Indeed. I really don't think there's all that much that you can say about a biopic. Their structures tend to be similar, and they tend to suffer from the same problems. Those of invention, imagination, excision, and, well, downright fabrication. Generally differing only in degree. The crucial factors then are to be found in subject and actor, and I can think of few more compelling combinations than the civil rights leader Malcolm X, as portrayed by Denzel Washington. Told in a linear fashion, with the occasional flashback, Lee's Malcolm X covers most of the significant portions of the once Malcolm Little's adult life. Early on, we see the beginning of his relationship with the White Sophia, Battlestar Galactica's Kate Vernon, and his move from Boston to Harlem, where he becomes employed by Delroy Lindo's gangster, West Indian Archie. Crossing Archie sees him flee back to Boston, where he starts a lucrative career as a burglar, until he is caught and sentenced harshly. Less for the crime of breaking and entering, and more for the crime of being a black man in a relationship with a white woman. While in prison, he meets Baines, Albert Hall, an adherent of the Nation of Islam, who helps Malcolm through the withdrawal of his cocaine addiction and aids in his transition to being a Muslim. Leaving prison 6 years later, clean, learned in scripture, and highly politicised and passionate, Little travels to Chicago to meet the head of the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, played here by Al Freeman Jr., but for some reason voiced by Pete Postlethwaite in The Usual Suspects, which I, for one, found very odd. Muhammad directs Malcolm to replace his original surname, Little, with the now famous X, and appoints him a preacher in the Nation of Islam. We then follow him as he becomes a popular but controversial figure in the civil rights movement. Through his Hajj to Mecca, the re-evaluation of his beliefs regarding white people, his disillusionment with the Nation of Islam, and ultimately to his assassination. It's difficult to argue that biopics have a great deal of value beyond entertainment, but Spike Lee's Malcolm X may be one of the few that do. It's more than 3 hours, which never bores, bringing humanity, depth and nuance to a man that is still vilified in some quarters today, portrayed as he is as an angry and violent man who urged death to the white man. Ignorantly, or conveniently, ignoring his walking back of those views after his pilgrimage. While it suffers from some of the ills of all biopics that I began talking about, Malcolm X still at least leaves a lot of the edgier statements in there, and is not afraid to show some of the man's faults. The film is full of empathy and attempts to understand its protagonist. While one might expect that Malcolm X would speak most to a black audience, it is absolutely not exclusionary. It's an inspirational film in that it portrays a human, with human problems, who overcame them and changed his life. Key to that being successful is Denzel Washington, who is magnificent throughout. Seldom showy, always utterly believable, be that full of righteous anger or oozing charm in a natty suit. Talking of, the costume design is excellent, and Malcolm X is given some incredible ensembles to wear in the first act. Though, here I have one of my few issues with the film, though one I share with many period pieces. Why is everyone so amazingly dressed? Now, perhaps people simply cared more in the past, but it seems there should at least be someone who looks as ill-attired as, say, many of the characters we found in our next film, Clockers. Mm-hmm. Ernest Dickerson is the DP again, and he shoots the film in 3 distinct ways for each of the acts, with warmth and saturation for his early days in Boston and Harlem, and cold for Malcolm's time in prison, visually marking the periods of his life. Apparently his skill doesn't extend to talking Spike Lee out of using his double dolly though, as that makes another unwelcome appearance here, though that's less nitpicking than my continued bafflement is at its use. It resolutely does not convey what Spike Lee thinks it conveys, and feels completely out of place in the fleeting moment in which it is utilised here. Also, Spike Lee in this film looks like a wee boy wearing his daddy's clothes. Like Do the Right Thing, and a number of other Lee works, Malcolm X was heralded on its release a few months after the LA riots which came in the wake of the acquittal of the police officers who beat Rodney King as timely. A word I am wary of because it seems to have never not been the case, regardless of when you watch it. Timeless, then. Well, Christ, let's hope not. But good films are good films, regardless of time. And this is a very good film.
Yeah, I suppose I won't repeat too much of what you're saying there, Drew, but I do agree completely. In terms of it being a biopic, it is one of my favourites. Perhaps my favourite.
I can't think of one I like better than this in terms of that genre.
Yes, it's incredibly well made, and I think a really useful film to keep coming back to, particularly because Malcolm X tends to be quite poorly understood. And I'm not just saying about his earlier career, which I wasn't all that well aware of until I'd seen this film. I certainly didn't expect there to be quite so much swing dancing in a film about Malcolm X. But yeah, a lot of his philosophy gets boiled down to a degree where it's not particularly helpful. And he was the violent one, right? And that's very much not the case. He was the one that hated the white people, right? And that's also very much not the case. Even at his most strident, it wasn't the case. And it even milled out later on as well, as you mentioned. So it's an interesting little refresher course for someone who is, I think, unfairly pilloried a lot of the time, in terms of not being helpful for the struggle for black rights. And, well, that aside, it's just a really good film. And it's really enjoyable, and it's really entertaining. And Denzel Washington is fantastic, and everyone else is fantastic in it as well. And look, it's got Delroy Lindo in it, so there's always going to be a winner. You can never get too much Delroy Lindo in anything. So, it's just a tremendous film all the way around. For me, it's up there with Do the Right Thing in terms of Spike Lee's output, and certainly something that we should definitely be recommending that everyone watch. Carve out the 3 hours and give this a look, because it's really good. Oh yes, and the dolly shots, yes, absolutely stupid. I've never liked it in anything. I can't remember it being a Malcolm X that much, so this is probably one of the least objectionable ones, I would guess. But yeah, every other time we've used it, it does not look like... All it's doing is detaching the characters from the world they're in, and it looks stupid. I don't like it. Yeah. I agree completely.
Which is what Spike Lee's trying to do with it, but it always looks so stupid. It's particularly because it takes you out of the film so much.
Yeah, but
it's so irritating.
Plus, he does tend to do it in times where there's no particular need for them to be detached from it. I can understand using that as a technique, but he just doesn't. He seems to use it at like random places. Like, isn't it in Jungle Fever? I think it is just when 2 characters are walking around the street having conversation, and there's no need for it to be used there, and it looks daft.
That's the first time I ever really thought about it, because I'd seen it before then, but when I saw Jungle Fever, it was the first time I really noticed it. And I do remember we talked about this. It's when Wesley Snipes and Spike Lee are walking down the street, and it's like, they just look like they're floating.
Yeah.
I think Jungle Fever is possibly the worst use of it.
Yeah.
Because it's got a nut. It just, like, they're just talking.
It's like, I've not done it in this film yet. I'm going to do it here. So.
Yeah, it's in the other ones. And it's amusing to note that when Spike Lee's talking about it in conversation with Ernest Dickerson particularly, said, like, we need to not overuse it, so I'll only ever use it when the story calls for it. Like, it's never called for it. Stop using it.
Yes.
It's so unnecessary. And in Malcolm X, it's perhaps because it's so fleeting. It's one of the more egregious uses of it, because it does nothing. And his idea is that it's showing, kind of someone almost being taken out of reality, or life happening without them being detached from it, or something like that. And it never works. It just looks silly.
Yeah.
And it happens. If it's 10 seconds, I'd be surprised. It's so short in this film, so if you weren't aware of it, I'm not surprised, Scott.
Yeah.
But it happens just as he's going to the ballroom at the end of the film. I think it's right before the moment when he meets that woman in the street, and she says he looks worried, and like, I know who you are, and I think you're doing good things, and basically Jesus is going to look out for you.
Yeah.
Which, inappropriate.
Dropped the ball on that one.
She wasn't saying it maliciously or anything like that. So, that was her belief. But it's like, I think it's just before that. He's just come down that street with that hat on, just before he goes to the ballroom. And it's like 5 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And why? If you're no, it's... And yes, it's also in the next film, unfortunately. It bothers me because it takes me out of the films.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, and I don't like it. But really, that's a very minor issue to pick with this film.
Yes.
And my talk about the clothes and stuff is like, I do legitimately mean what I say. I was like, why does everyone look so perfect? But also, I think I'm kind of just jealous because it's a time when like men got to wear. I suppose you can if you want to, but still, you know what I mean. Like men got to wear like colours and stuff. You know, it wasn't just like if you're dressing up. It's not just a black suit or like a shirt and trousers. So I was like, no. At one point, Denzel Washington's wearing this massive wide brim hat and a black and red striped suit. And like, why are men's clothes not fun anymore?
Yeah.
Anyway,